This is today's religious talk, and today I'm going to be discussing why love doesn't get the job done. Yes, why love no longer works. Love doesn't get the job done. Despite what they say, despite how much they preach it, love is not the answer. Unfortunately, this is the brutal truth. We've been raised in the Judeo-Christian tradition where they taught us to love your enemies and to love thy neighbor. But how's that working for you? If it is at all. You see, the message of love has been preached for centuries, but it's ineffective because the world is still evil. The world is still bad. All you need to do is turn on your television, look at the news. So clearly, this message of love is ineffective. You know, people go to church every Sunday, and for an hour, they hear the good news, the good message. But when they leave, they return back to their original state, and nothing changes. So you think you're going to leave all that prejudice in the parking lot to go receive the message of God, and it stays there in the parking lot. And for an hour, you're righteous. For an hour, you love everyone. But as soon as you leave the church doors, everything creeps back in because you didn't change your mentality. Because the mentality didn't change. So how do we move forward to make a better society? How do we move forward to create peace in this world? Mutual respect. Starts with education. Education is the answer, not love. Love is not the answer. Education. This is why Jesus said, "My people perish for lack of knowledge." You see, we need to be educated. Because only through a proper education of history, cultures, societies, then we'll have a new awareness that will breed a new understanding. And hopefully that will make us more compassionate towards others. So essentially, what has to happen is that, you see, you can't erase a superiority complex that resides in certain individuals. If you believe that you're better than another group of people, you're going to see them as lower than you. And that's going to make you treat them in an inferior way. So this relates to social justice and inequity. And it makes you look down on other groups of people. So where's the love? That's not love. Love is equality. So when we see each other on an even playing field, when we see each other as equals, then we'll start to treat each other better. But until then, you think you can't just preach love into people and it's going to erase their prejudice. It's going to erase their racist mentality. It's going to erase their elitism or classism or whatever other ism is plaguing them. You can't love it out of them. A message of love is not going to erase all those isms that plague the mentality of certain individuals. So this is why I say love is not the answer. Because love is not some detergent that's going to cleanse the stain on people's brain, on their psyche. The truth of the matter is, we live in a society that's very prejudiced. We live in a society that's classist and racist. And this is why everyone treats each other the way that they do. So how does religion or the message of love eradicate that poisonous mentality that plagues the greater society? It's not helping. So we need a new message. We need a new message. What we need is to be humbled through education. We need to humiliate and shame people. That's the answer. Shame and humiliation is the answer. Because then, when people are humbled, then they'll start treating other people better because they know that they're not better than them. They don't have an advantage. They don't have anything over them. And a thorough study of history will prove that. Once you see that you're not so great after all, and your people did terrible things as well. And there's dirt on everyone. There's dirt on everyone. No one's as righteous as they seem. No group of people are as wonderful as they seem. Not when you do a thorough examination of history and you go into their background and you see all the filth that everyone has committed. And when we acknowledge that filth, that mucky history, we'll see that we're all guilty and we're all convicted of crimes. And that shame and humility will literally embarrass us into perhaps becoming better people. So we need education. We need a thorough knowledge of history in order to make people understand that we're all just human beings down here on this earth trying to do the best that we can with the tools and resources that are provided to us. And we're all just trying to make a better life and improve the conditions of our circumstances. So no one has a right to look down on anyone. And you can't have a proper society when the superiority complex is functioning within it. So people need to be humbled, and for the individuals that have that superiority complex, I'd like to ask you, what's so great about you? Why do you feel that you're better than other people? Who's your father? And who's your grandfather? And who's your great-great-grandfather? What did you do to esteem yourself above others, to feel that you're better than anyone else? You don't have the right to hate anyone. What's so special about you? So these people need an adjustment. And that adjustment comes through a thorough recognition of history. So I call for education over love. And that's the only way we're going to eradicate the supremacist mentality that plagues the greater society, that creates injustice and inequity and harsher treatment towards other people groups. You can't love this. You can't love the evil out of them. This is a erroneous message. This is terrible teaching. All these diseases that plague the mentality of individuals, and you think that just because you go to church and hear a message to love your neighbor, that somehow that's going to transcend and translate into your behavioral conduct once you enter society. Church is not like a quick fix. You go in there, you hear a good message, it moves you for an hour or so, and then the message stays there because you don't put it into a practice, because once you leave, you cannot resist the temptation of seeing others as less than you. You cannot resist the temptation of seeing other people as inferior. And on some level, conscious behavior, the unconscious mind, that is going to have an effect on the way you treat other people. You're going to treat them below the scale of human dignity. You're going to treat them poorly because deep down you believe that they are less than you. So the truth is, how do we combat the supremacist mentality? How do we combat the superiority complex? How do we eradicate that? Because that's the true evil. That's the true evil that has destroyed the social order. And love is not getting the job done. Love doesn't change that mentality. That mentality needs to undergo an adjustment. And the only thing that can adjust that type of psychology is education. We need to educate people, because when we educate people, then we change their mentality and how they think. And that translates to behavior. And then it will produce a better social outcome, and it will improve the social order. So I call for education, because if you're walking around thinking that you're better than other people, not realizing that your ancestors were just as savage as perhaps the people that you are labeling and looking at as savage today, right? So this is how we change the landscape. This is how we change things. Because if the message of love was so effective and so powerful, don't you think by now it would have produced a positive result for the greater society? Do you think we'd still have the problems that we have today if this Christian message was so powerful? If this Christian message was so effective, if it worked, don't you think by now, it would have produced a utopian society? So clearly, love hasn't gotten the job done. Clearly, the message of love hasn't gotten the job done. So we can preach this till we're blue in the face. It's not having an effect on the people. So if you want to produce change, change comes from shame and humiliation. You need to humiliate and shame people. Because once they realize that maybe they're not so great after all, maybe they'll be more humble, and maybe their behavior will change. See, it all starts in the mind, the mentality. This is what constitutes the attitudinal disposition, which translates into the behavioral conduct, which affects other facets or spheres of human activity and social interaction. It's so simple. It's so simple. So maybe the school system, maybe the church needs to start giving history lessons. Maybe that will be more effective or have a more positive outcome on the congregants. Maybe somebody needs to teach people about the injustices of history and how it's created certain socioeconomic conditions and circumstances for other individuals. That way, they'll have empathy and compassion on the less fortunate, on the marginalized, on the downtrodden of society, or just the people that are not doing as well as others. Because we look down on people for various reasons: social economic status, education, finances. You don't make enough as much money as me, you're inferior. Or you're not as educated as me, you're inferior to me. Or perhaps because of the color of your skin, I deem you as lesser or inferior to me. There's various social markers that we can use to delineate who's worthy and who's unworthy. And going to the church is not going to erase how you feel about other people based on those social indicators: socioeconomics, finance, education, class. So you can't get a person who's wealthy, of a higher echelon in society. This is why Jesus said it's harder for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven. Because what he's trying to say, it's harder for somebody in a higher position to look at others as equal to them, because they'll always have that superiority complex. But here's where hypocrisy comes in. You see, the problem is, once again, like Jesus said, They love the fruit, but they hate the tree. They love the fruit, but they hate the tree, which means that sometimes people like the cultural products of other groups of people, but they don't like those people. They don't necessarily like those people. They just like what those people produce. So we love the food of other cultures. We'll eat other cultures' food all day. We like to vacation in other people's countries. We like to enjoy their climates, their fruits and vegetables, their culture. We love their music. We love their song and dance. We love everything about the cultural products that are produced by people, particularly disenfranchised groups. We just don't like those people. So we subjugate those people, and sometimes we treat them poorly. But yet we do this under the umbrella of Christianity. We do this with a Christian mindset. And I don't know how that works, but it's time to destroy that, because you can't get to have both. You can't have a false sense of righteousness and believe you're a good person while you treat other people poorly at the same time. That's not going to work. So one has to cancel out the other. So either we remove your religiosity, or we shame you. We humiliate you in order to humble you so that you see others on the same level and equal. And then, and only then, will we achieve the true social justice and equality that we're looking for. But until then, we'll never achieve it with this convoluted message of just love, just love. Like we can just smear love over everything and it's going to fix the problem. Like it's some Band-Aid solution. That's exactly what it is. It doesn't heal the wounds. So you can't impose a message of love on a supremacist psychology and think it's going to work without educating that psychology to change it, to change the mentality. So this is why I am particularly fed up with the ineffectiveness of the Christian message and the Christian doctrine. And I don't think it's holding up by today's standards. It's not producing the results. And it's all about results. Everything is results. So if something's not working, at what point do you decide that perhaps we need to discard this message, or perhaps this message is ineffective? At what point do you resort to a different strategy, to a different approach? You know, you can't legislate love. You can't force people to see each other as equals. You can't impose a loving disposition on hateful people. If people are naturally hateful towards other people for whatever reason, and it's not just race, as I said before, it could be because of their financial status. It could be because of their educational level. It could be social economic. It could be a plethora of reasons why people look down on others, subjugate them, and treat them inferior. But the problem is when those people claim to be religious, or if they call themselves Christians, and they're receiving the doctrine of Christ, a man who fought for social justice, a man who looked at the disparities and inequities of his society and spoke out against it. He spoke truth to power, so much to the extent that it got him killed. So how can you worship that type of man and then be carrying on with the nonsense that you carry on in your day-to-day life and not consider yourself to be a hypocrite? And if there was one thing that Jesus hated the most above all, is hypocrisy. That was his main contention with the religious establishment at the time, because he felt that they were all hypocrites because they were saying one thing and doing the other. And today we have that same situation. So nothing's changed. Nothing's changed. It's just new characters in the same game, new players in the same game. Because the mentality of the establishment still remains. So the only way to combat this, to destroy it, and eradicate the evil serpent once and for all, is to have a new strategy. So I'm done with love, because love doesn't work. I say it's time to expose the wrongdoers. It's time to humiliate and shame them so that they realize that maybe they're not so great after all. Maybe they're not so, and maybe they're in the position that they're in because of circumstances. You know, there is something called transgenerational wealth inheritance. Maybe there's something called nepotism, favoritism, you know, opportunities that put you ahead and give you the advantage over others. So maybe you should be humble for those things. Because perhaps given the same resources and opportunities, perhaps other people would outperform you. Instead of trying to devise ways to intellectually say that people are genetically inferior or they have a lower IQ, and you're trying everything to demonize and subjugate other groups. You're bringing about key performance indicators, social statistics, everything to show that another people is savage or dysfunctional. I got news for you. Everyone's dysfunctional. Everybody's got issues and problems. It's just how well we mask them versus other people. Some people's mess is more visible than others. Well, there's a lot of stuff going on behind closed doors that you don't see. And that's why I'm so fortunate we live in an age of social media where now they're starting to shed light on some of the disgusting things that are occurring in the dark. So that way we stop idolizing people, whether it be celebrities, politicians, people of higher status that we deem higher in the social order. And then we realize that sometimes they're doing things that are not desirable. So this is my message today, that you can't achieve love. You can't achieve love in a society where there's no mutual understanding of the different people that society is composed of that make the greater collective. You can't just snap your fingers and make everyone fall in love with each other. Not when we have hidden prejudices or unconscious biases. Not when we have racial animus and other ideas that are inherent in the social conditioning, in our social conditioning, whether what we received in our home, in our very households, certain conversations that were held, that indoctrinated us, and how we carry that into the greater society. So we can't just broad stroke love as a paintbrush and think it's going to correct and fix everything. Teach people the truth. Teach people about society and how it functions, economics, history. Educate people. And then perhaps it will put us in a different direction. So this is my message today, to forget about love. We don't need love right now. Forget about love. Love ain't doing nothing. Love is not helping nothing. Education. Education is the key. Education is the answer. And it will also combat those who have the opposite, the inferiority complex. the low self-esteem complex, the ones that accept lesser treatment, the passive, the weak. You know, the Bible says the meek shall inherit the earth. But how? How can someone meek inherit the earth if they never assert themselves? If they don't have any confidence? I don't believe anything's coming to a weak person. Not if they don't do the work to develop themselves through education, to look and examine history and why they're in the position that they're in. Then and only then they'll develop the self-confidence to assert themselves, and then they can start gaining a foothold in the society and getting what they're supposed to get. That's how the meek will inherit the earth. The meek aren't going to get anything but poor treatment and disrespect so long as they accept it, because they have the inferiority complex and the low self-esteem. And that's why they continue to accept poor treatment. And while the opposite people have the superiority complex, because they have a misunderstanding of history. They think it's just manifest destiny that put them in the position that they're in. And they lack the humility. So it's time to create an even playing field of the mind, mentally. It might not have an immediate result on the social landscape because things take time. But at the very least, we can change the mentality of individuals so that they don't feel so privileged. So this is the work that we need to do. And the answer is journalism. Jesus is in journalism. Jesus was a journalist. Journalism is what advances the society. Proper journalism, reporting on the conditions. This is how we move forward. What do you think Jesus was doing? He was letting you know. That's why it's called the good news. It was the news, the gospel, the good news. He was reporting the news, right? And what's the news? That the poor are still with us. The hungry are not fed. The naked are not clothed. The homeless do not have shelter. The elites are still exploiting the people. We're still paying taxes to a foreign colonial imperialistic regime. That was what he was reporting to the society. That things are still messed up. The lepers are still diseased. The prostitutes, the tax collectors, the diseased. All this that was taking place, right? He was reporting it. So if you're a Christian, you got to find journalism. You got to, instead of keeping a blind eye to the social ills, your call is to go out there and change it. Christianity is a call to action. It's not a call to belief. It's a call to action. Faith without works is dead. You got to put in the work. And that's the problem, because a lot of us are lazy. We don't want to put in the work. We just want to just believe. We just want to believe and pray. And say, oh, I love everyone. And this is a message of love. That's garbage. Love don't work. You can't smear love over hate and think that the hate is going to disappear. You have to educate people out of their hateful mentality, educate people out of their hateful disposition. Then, maybe then, will love dominate. But until then, the world will never change. So The battle is fought from the shoulders up. All is mental. And this is about changing people's mentalities and their belief systems. So, this is today's religious talk. And I'm encouraging everyone to start examining history, start looking into the past, study different cultures, study different religions, gain insight into different perspectives, and then you'll have a better understanding about how other people function so that you can expand your dialogue. And hopefully this will lead to a better result. Thank you.